Everyone, this is Erin from Morehouse Farm. We are getting ready to remove the marker row for the Afterthought heel of our Wanderly socks, knit in Morehouse Merino gator yarn and designed by Amy Snell, the Devious Knitter. And this is where we're going to put in the heel. But first, we have to take out that marker row. So what I'm going to do is grab a tiny DPN, and I'm going to start picking up the stitches in the row below. If I am careful and I grab the right leg of each stitch, they will be positioned as if to knit on this needle. If I'm not careful and I grab the left leg, that is a fantastic learning experience. As a combination knitter, or a combination purler, I should say, the right leg of my stitches when I purl ends up to the back of the needle. So I'm used to stitches sitting goofy-footed, as they would say in the skiing world. And that is okay with me. If you haven't ever tried that, I highly recommend it because it really helps you learn to read your knitting and understand the needle just goes in the hole. It doesn't really matter what else happens with it. So there's half of them. I will continue on and do the same across the rest of the way, and I will do this also on the top row. Now, some people, myself included, like to live dangerously, in which case we would say, whatever, rip out the yarn and then we'll pick it up later. I've been known to do that, but I know that's not the case for a lot of people. If you want to put in the needles to hold it, that can definitely help you make sure you've got all those stitches. If you do want to live dangerously, though, which is what I often say here, may help to put your hand inside the sock so you can see what you're working on. And you're going to pull out these stitches, these orange ones. This was just a placeholder row. You can see where you want to pick them up now along the way if you want to put them in. Maybe you just want to take them out and catch them later. And I think that is a lot easier to do on the plain knit side versus the knit and purl, but it's right there if you want to grab it for later. So we're just pulling this yarn out. Notice I don't have a very long tail on this. I could cut this along the way as I notice the wool is starting to get together. That's what I love about wool. So it's not an issue for my stitches to run away anywhere. So here I can just keep pulling them out one at a time. You may find it easier to fold it instead. That's another way to do it too. Or maybe you do want to go through and just catch each stitch. Notice that one's there. This is harder on the purl side. Then there's the knit side. Then there's the purl side. If you choose to do it this way, so you caught the stitches and now you're pulling it out. It is definitely tighter this way simply because you have everything caught up. And I've already got the stitch on the bottom side anchored there. Now my top side is anchored. And I can just keep pulling out the stitches all the way along. And that's really all there is to it. And you're going to end up with 2 rows of stitches. One on what will be the top of the heel. One will be on the bottom of the heel. And together, that's what's going to help us create the Afterthought heel. So you can continue rowing across the row here, pulling these out a couple at a time. You can break this yarn if you want to. It might be easier rather than pulling it all out. In fact, let's do that just to show you what that looks like. All right, now I have a much shorter piece to wade through, so if I go to pick up a few stitches here, I have very little to pull out. That's why we're using scrap yarn. That actually goes a whole lot faster. And we're about halfway across here. Notice this is caught underneath, as in my scrap yarn held the stitch, but I didn't get it on the needle. So that's a good way to know, I need to reposition that. And there we go. If again, I want to try it without holding the needle, look how much easier the stitches move. But I do need to get through, make sure I pick those up at some point. You decide when it's easiest for you to grab those and keep them going. You can break the yarn again at any time. That's why you were using just that little bit of leftover scrap yarn. If you choose, pick them up a couple at a time. or don't. That's what I love about these knitting techniques is there's so many different ways to do the same thing. You can pick the one that makes the most sense for you. And you'll notice I switch back and forth between techniques often, not just in videos, but because I just feel like it's worth giving it a try, because we often stick with the first way that we learn something, and that's not necessarily the best way. It's just the first way. Just like when we're problem solving, we tend to go for the first answer rather than the best answer. But with a little bit of patience and some discernment, we can find the best answer. And here we go down to the home stretch. Look at how much easier that comes out when you don't have a long tail to worry about. And again, you'll see me putting the stitches on the needle in whatever orientation I grab them, because it just doesn't worry me or faze me to be able to pick them back up when I'm knitting. And that is a fantastic skill to learn if you haven't already. So I've been asked to do a class on different ways to purl. We'll have to get that one in the works so that we can take advantage of this. Because once we're comfortable with that, it doesn't matter whenever you've got runaway stitches. You can just pick them up and keep on knitting. You don't have to fiddle with them to decide how they should be positioned before you can keep working. There's one more to pick up, one more there. And looks like we are down to the end here. Yes, here we go. That is going to be the hole that is now going to be my sock heel. Happy knitting!